Oh,
That's
this is the,
But I know I train more chaplains straight out of chapels.
That's expensive.
It's captains. They come out. There's an 03.
money supply.
Army, if,
That's
with your education, in the Army, you'd be in 02, which is the first one. And that's not as much money as 03.
Well, Jackie's trying to recruit me.
No, I'm just trying to show you why there's
Alternatives.
money out there to be
There's options out there.
made. And it doesn't have to affect you deeply in what you do here.
Here I am trying to focus on my weight, school. I guess the military had helped me with that part, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah. Oh, trust me, they'll run it off.
Run it off until the bone separates from the muscle separates from the bone. All right. Well, good evening, everybody.
Oh, you decided to join us?
So today's text is Genesis 4. Let's take a moment, though, and look at Deuteronomy 30. I heard this idea, Deuteronomy chapter 30. I mean, this is the end, right? I mean, Moses is coming to an end. His own life is coming to an end. His second, sermon or second time, however you want to interpret Deuteronomy, is coming to an end. And so he lays out something that I think is kind of perhaps an interesting idea. But as you're turning there, I'm trying to think of any announcements to be made. Lord's Supper Sunday. Man. And going back to, Jack and I talked about topic. I'm not a fan of topics because it's like I've spent the last 2 days trying to ask myself what is a sermon text that I believe is appropriate. And I think I'm going to settle on Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, the suffering servant. I would say it looks like, when you read the Gospels and you read the Passion Week account, it's a lot of narrative and it's great. But when you read Isaiah 53, it kind of explains why. It gets into more of what's happening or what's going on rather than just in the Gospels, it's what's happening. So that's what I'm going to settle on for Sunday is Isaiah, technically Isaiah 52, 13 through 53, verse 11, I think. But anyways. All right, so this was an interesting idea that I heard. This was Dr. Williams, not mine. So give full credit here. Chapter 30, verse 11. So Moses is ending, right? This is his final oomph, you can say. This command that I give you today is certainly not too difficult or beyond your reach. Verse 12. It is not in heaven so that you have to ask, who will go up to heaven? Get it for us and proclaim it to us so that we may follow it. And it is not across the sea so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea? Get it for us, proclaim it to us so that we may follow it. But the message is very near you and in your mouth and in your heart so that you may follow it. See, today I have set before you life and prosperity, death and adversity. For I am commanding you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his commands, statutes, and ordinances, so that you may live and multiply, and the Lord your God may bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away, you do not listen, and you are led astray to bow and worship to other gods and serve them, I tell you today, you will certainly perish and will not prolong your days in the land you are entering to possess across the Jordan. I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live. Love the Lord your God, obey him, and remain faithful to him. For he is your life, and he will prolong your days as you live in the land the Lord swore to give to your fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, a lot of what we've seen already in Genesis, right? I set before you a choice. Choose life. How's he word it? Life and prosperity. You have in verse 15, I have set before you life and prosperity. And then you also have in verse 19, I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. I mean, in so many ways, Moses is painting Israel like an Adam, right? God makes Adam and they're entering the land. They're coming in, they're in the Garden of Eden. And if you obey me, you get life and prosperity and blessing. You get to live in the land, the garden, and multiply. But if you disobey, then you choose death and you choose curse. And that's what we just read in Genesis 3. They disobeyed, and God already made the statement, if you eat from this tree, you will die. And then they did, and then now they're cursed and they're taken out of the land. And they're going to have to live that way for the rest of their lives. So in some ways, as we see at the end of Deuteronomy, Moses is basically making the same thing. You saw what Adam did. Now you have that same choice to make yourself. Life and prosperity, death and curse by merely the word of God. Love and obey, or disobey and choose death. So what do you think? You think Moses is kind of making that comparison between Adam and Israel? I just thought it was an interesting idea. But you can see kind of the life, blessing, death, and curse, the same thing Adam had. And it's emphasizing your choice. It is your choice on which way you go with that. And then if you read in chapter 31, Moses says, y'all are a bunch of stiff-necked people, and when I die, you're going to leave. He already says that, so it tells you how he feels about their choice. So, anyways, all right, interesting thought. Genesis 4. Genesis 4. We are no longer in the beautiful garden. The garden that God made. The garden that, God made all the fruits. He did everything, and he watered it. He made it beautiful, and he told man and woman, this, all that you may see, you may eat, except for this one. All right, chapter 4, Genesis chapter 4, starting in verse 1. The man was intimate with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. She said, I have had a male child with the Lord's help. She also gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel became a shepherd of flocks, but Cain worked the ground. In the course of time, Cain presented some of the land's produce as an offering to the Lord, and Abel also presented an offering, some of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but he did not have regard for Cain and his offering. Cain was furious and he looked despondent. So, based on that right there, we'll take a pause. What textual clues is given to us that separates Cain's offering from Abel's offering?
Cain just gave whatever he did.
And it said Abel brought.
Yeah, Abel brought the firstborn, or the
Cain
first.
just brought whatever. Some of the land's.
Yeah, it just kind of gives Cain as a general. It doesn't really even add a comment, does it? Like, it doesn't even say much about what he gave. But Abel is highlighted. Abel gets an extra description. And you got, it's right there, right?
Let me ask you a question. We're stuck on that firstborn part, right? If he had cattle, the firstborn calf he gave to God, right?
Right, if it was unblemished.
So if you're doing produce, do you want to give the first ripe produce? Or just whatever comes up on the vine, as soon as it comes up, pluck it and give it to him?
Would be the best of your produce, the very best.
That's what I think. So, and that may not be the first thing you harvest. It may be halfway through your harvest.
Yeah.
But the way you read this, he wanted the first picking. Is that not right?
I'm trying to put myself as an ancient farmer. Was the first time you harvest, was that a day of celebration? If you worked in a rain, like how much time would one have to wait?
It rained back then.
Well, not here. You're right. Good call. Oh, good call. No, in that way she had a better system. God's irrigation plan, right? You knew what would happen. And so, I mean, I don't know what it'd like to be an ancient farmer, but it would seem like, a harvest, the day of harvest, whatever it be, the first harvest was always a celebratory moment. Your hard work paid off.
When you look at physically farming or gardening, depending on the size of what you've got, there is so much more physical labor has to go into that. And what there is, go out and just feed your cattle and make sure they're watered and watch them.
No, would Abel agree with you?
Well, I'd sure argue with you. I'd tell him you can go over to Cain's garden and take care of it for a while and let him have a break and see the difference. So I don't understand why God was not happy with what he was being offered.
Well, sometimes a plant, you can get some that are nice, very nice ones, and the others are not so nice. Maybe just say
Well,
nice ones for
I
him.
mean,
Not so nice for him,
It seems like Abel's.
I would want to wait until I had the best of what I had and then offer it to him. And not just the first thing that popped out.
Well, and it could have been that, it could have been his attitude.
I didn't think about that.
That's what my,
He's working harder.
yeah, here says that it was because of the sin in Cain's. The fact that, it says that in the law of Moses, it was a grain offering was what was authorized. The fact that Cain's offering was a vegetation rather than animal is not why God did not have regard for it. Cain's furious reaction suggests that the offering was rejected because of sin in his heart. But I mean, when you read that, you don't know all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would almost disagree with that.
Well,
Scholar.
that's a commentary.
I know. And because I mean,
Don't say that.
It's that study Bible, the preacher.
I
The preacher gave it to you.
I have to look. I mean, mine would say in this textual evidence, obviously here we are in chapter 4, there is no prescription, right? There is no prescription on any kind of offerings or sacrifices. I mean, that's not until Exodus, but that doesn't mean they didn't practice. I mean, Abraham did it, right? Whenever they made a covenant, they would do that stuff. So it was there, but we don't see how God has, I want it this way. So I would say, just from looking at the text, that Abel's was highlighted because it was his best. Like Cain, it didn't highlight what effort or what Cain brought, but Abel's was highlighted. And that's the contrast, is Abel's was, which I would have to assume Moses would say that Cain's was not. And that's just something to think about. Obviously, the fat portion, firstborn of his flock, I mean, obviously that's highlighting, that's a great sacrifice. Fat portions is a great sacrifice, right? I mean, there's no better way to cook anything than in fat, right? Give me right.
Yeah, it's a natural grease.
I mean, if you don't use butter, you're not using the right stuff.
So should we take from this, don't farm, raise cattle?
Offer your best.
It was a camel, it might have been a sheep.
Sheep don't have that much fat.
And it's also interesting too. We don't even have a time to. The first thing we get when that blood was even shed is when God made skins, right?
Yeah.
That's the first time that they might have ever seen blood in their life.
Now, they were going to be vegetarian.
But somewhere between Cain to the next generation, Abel, they killed animals, and I'm assuming they ate too. But I mean, just with this limited information we're given here, I would definitely say that Abel's is highlighted because it was his best, and that's what God accepted, was his best. We don't get so much why God didn't look favorably on Cain. We don't get much about why not Cain, but we got why Abel.
Well, Anita may be right. Maybe it's hard, but right.
Well, and that's something that's throughout the Bible. Is just even in the act of offering. We talked about this in Sunday school. The widow's mite, right? In Luke 21, he says here, he looked up and saw the rich dropping their offerings into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow dropping in 2 tiny coins. Truly, I tell you, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all of them. For all these people have put in gifts out of their surplus, but she, out of her poverty, has put in all she had to live on. Boy, you know, that's such a small paragraph, but it is so profound.
Yeah.
What is it that Jesus delights in here?
Your heart.
What
It's not
about
what you give? It's your heart. Give them your heart.
A willingness to sacrifice.
I say sacrifice. She made a sacrifice
Well, isn't that your heart?
for the Lord. It
You
is.
do it. Okay.
It's what about the heart? It's something that it costs you. It
It's not,
costs
I
you.
have extra money in my budget this month, let's put an offering plate. It's, well, if I give to the Lord, that means we may not be able to do that, but I'm willing to do it anyway. So that having that, of being willing to do that.
Yeah, you step out on faith, God's gonna take care of it.
And
And anybody
Yes.
that's poor, if they're stepping out on faith and, well, even the rich man, if he's giving more than his surplus, he doesn't have a surplus, but he's giving, with the understanding that, well, you know, here it is, Lord, I don't know what I'm gonna do now, but I'm leaving it up to you. Many, many times, people, and we've been in that position. We tithe and, well, there goes the grocery money. But then somewhere down the line, it all comes back to you. That's going out on faith. But if you're saying, like she said, if you've got, well, we got $200, we pay all of our bills, there's our play money, there, whatever we want to do. Hey, we've got this left, we're going to give that to the church. That's not sacrifice.
And that's what I think you were talking a little about, the firstborn. Like God wanting the firstborn. But what
Yeah.
if the firstborn isn't the best?
Yeah,
Maybe not, but it is the first, and you don't know how many are going to come after that.
that's
It
right.
has
You
always
don't
been
know if
my
you'll
mind.
have any more.
If you're giving the very first of every one of your livestock, you don't know how many more you're going to have that season. So it's that idea. Maybe it's not necessarily the best. Maybe the others are going to be fatter and healthier, and
Yeah.
whatever. But it's the first, and you're trusting that God will give you more.
They'll give you something better, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'd always thought when it came to like firstborn and first fruits.
you know, and I hate to go on a separate topic, but this the idea of firstborn. I mean, God does so many different things. Firstborn's always special, right? Whether it be produce, whether it be cattle, whether it be your children. But where do we see the blessing in the scriptures follow? Not the firstborn,
Right.
the younger, right? Cain's the oldest, but we're going to see what happens to him. And then you go on, you have Jacob and Esau. Esau came first, Jacob. Blessing follows who? 12 tribes.
Joseph,
Reuben was number one. Yeah, he doesn't get blessing.
yeah, he's not hardly missing.
So I mean, that's just always the thing is first fruits are important, you know, but at the same time, God always just changes things the way cultural is
Well, how many
he's
brothers-
going to do it through the
how
younger.
many brothers
Older
did
shall serve
Joseph
the younger.
have?
Huh?
How many was there at before Joseph?
Before Joseph, Benjamin's younger. Joseph was,
And there are a couple others.
I think Joseph's probably second to youngest. I'm guessing. I mean, all his brothers were older and overpowered him.
Yeah.
Um,
His older brothers threw him in the ditch or in the well or whatever it was.
But you know, not to go off the topic of sacrifice and heart. I mean, even we read in Sunday school 2 Corinthians 8:9, it talks about giving for missions and giving in general, and he says God loves a cheerful giver. You know, and so when you look at the Old Testament and you see the law of what the requirements are for this offering or this offering, it was never meant to be seen as a legality like a textbook. While it is in some ways, God does care about your intent. Are you doing this because you love God, which is what we read in Deuteronomy 30? Love God with all of your heart. And so you see God give a command, I want 10% of your crops or grain for this offering. You do so willingly and delighting. You do so. Not out of compulsion, not because I got to do it. Oh, here comes that offering plate, which no one has seen in a year. It has not come across the aisle. You know, and it's like, but what does God delight in? And we see in Luke 21, what does Jesus delight in? And we talked in Sunday school, God doesn't need your money. God doesn't need money. He can do more with 2 mites than he can with $1 million. He can. It's not the point. It's just another opportunity to honor him. That's what it's for. So Abel did the right thing, and apparently Cain did not. And how did Cain react? Cain It says in verse 5, Cain was furious and he looked despondent. And that to me just a little bit interesting is how did Cain even know? How did he know that God was displeased with his own offering? So even I would say during this time, God was still talking to Adam and to Eve and to Cain and Abel, because I don't know how else Cain would know. Would it just not go up in flames? I don't know. We don't know. We just know that this is what happened and this is how Cain felt about it. And the Lord, in his grace and mercy, talks to Cain about the issue in verse 6. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you furious and why do you look despondent? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." Such a fascinating warning from God. We don't have a prophet here speaking on behalf. We have God literally warning Cain that sin's desire is to be your master. That's what it wants, to rule your heart. And God said, basically do what? Do right. Right? How easy is it? It sounds such a simple, advice to anybody. Do right. Do right. People talk about they get mad or there's something like that, or they want to withhold something. And just like, you know what? You just need to do right. Just do right. Very simple. It's not hard. Just do right. And if you do right, then your offering will be accepted. So Cain heard the advice. How did he respond? Verse 8, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's guardian?" Then he said, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed, alienated from the ground that opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood you have shed. If you work the ground, it will never again give you its yield. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." What does it say about the Lord here in that little dialogue we have? What's it say about his abilities? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. What does that say?
He knows everything.
It reminds me of in the garden when God comes walking in the garden, he says to Adam and Eve, "Where are you?" And I feel like it's the exact same thing. He knows where they are. He's giving them an opportunity to explain himself. He's giving him the opportunity to confess, but he doesn't. He lies.
Yeah.
He lies, and then what happens when we see disobedience? Curse. We see the curse. You lie and you disobey, and we see a curse. And this time the curse just continues to now even get worse. It's worse than what Adam and Eve got. Adam was now cursed to work the ground of thorns and thistles and eat from the sweat of your brow to the day you die. And now this time, if you even work the ground, nothing will come out. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. How is being a wanderer on the earth worse than being a, would you say, a worker of the land?
You can never settle down. You can never be in one place. You have to move and find food.
No home.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Always just, oh man, trying to think of the word.
You can't produce your own welfare anymore, so you have to go and find it.
You cannot, you have to live day by day based on what you find in the moment. And so, that's that's obviously sin, disobedience leads to curse. And then let's keep reading here in verse 13. But Cain answered the Lord, "My punishment is too great to bear. Since you are banishing me today from the face of the earth, I must hide from your presence and become a restless wanderer on the earth. Whoever finds me will kill me." Then the Lord replied to him, "In that case, whoever kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." And he placed a mark on Cain so that whoever found him would not kill him. Then Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Apparently that's a whole ding about the word east. If you're going east, I think it says if you're going east, it's a bad thing. If you're coming from the east, it's a good thing. I don't know. Interesting thoughts. Because you don't ever hear the word west, do you? You think about that. When you read the Old Testament, you won't see the word west or south much or north, but the word kedem, east, hundreds and hundreds of frequencies. So it's kind of an interesting take about how the Bible uses directions. But anyway, so our Lord, again, despite the sinful choice he made, continues to show mercy. He showed mercy to Adam and Eve, right? He clothed them. They did not die immediately. And you could even say that them not living forever is also mercy. Depends on how we view that wording. So same thing with Cain, is that God showed mercy and he offered to protect him by putting a mark on him. Now, what is that mark? Boy, that's a debate today. We don't know. I can tell you theories, but I get in trouble. I get flagged. But verse 17, Cain was intimate with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. Then Cain became the builder of a city, and he named the city Enoch after his son. Now, where did Cain get his wife? Don't know.
Next. Where'd she come?
Don't know. Well, it's also interesting that Cain says that whoever finds me will kill me. So, what? Yeah, like the rest of your family? Because we've always had this picture that it was Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and then eventually Cain and Seth. But in truth, God is highlighting particular individuals in that family. I would say Adam and Eve, God told them to multiply, right? To multiply. I wouldn't say having two children multiplies and fill the earth. So how many? We don't know. We don't know. But they get to live to be 1,000, roughly.
If they're having kids when they're 100 or 200 years old, right? They could be having kids for 100 years.
And then there's 7 children.
Yeah. That certain period, that's not a 20-year window anymore. Could be a long, long window. Which I heard another interesting idea. We'll get to it. It has to do with when God wants to wipe out mankind, about why people no longer live 1,000 years and that they start to taper off to the hundreds. And eventually, Moses in Psalm 90 says 70, and if you have strength, 80. So even Moses changes at his time. But anyways, so Cain was and his wife. They built the city, named after his son Enoch. And then we got a few names here. Verse 18, Arad was born to Enoch. Arad fathered Mahu-Yael. Mahu-Yael fathered Methushael, and Methushael fathered Lamech. Lamech took 2 wives for himself, one named Adah and the other named Zillah. Adah bore Jabal, and he was the father of the nomadic herdsmen. His brother was named Jubal, and he was the father of all who played the lyre and the flute. Zillah bore Tubal-Cain, who made all the bronze and iron tools. Tubal-Cain's sister was Ne'emah. Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, pay attention to my words. For I killed a man for wounding me, and a young man for striking me. If Cain is to be avenged 7 times over, then for Lamech it will be 77 times. So that little speech, is that being used in a positive way about the description of Lamech, or is it being used in a negative way about its depiction of Lamech? What do you think?
Boasting, but it's a negative.
Okay, how? What do you think?
He thinks he's worth 77 times. To the 7.
Well, first of all,
To me, it's kind of a dare. If you're going to do Cain 7 times over, well, just go ahead. Go ahead, do me.
I'm worse than Cain.
Yeah, do me.
Well, so far we have seen in the Bible, who is it that has the authority to give blessings and curses? It is God alone that has the authority and the right. See, this is the thing we see the Bible and the Genesis really start to come out, right? When Satan comes up to Eve and he says, you will be like God. You will have that knowing. It's raining pretty good out there.
I started saying, am I hearing something?
Yeah.
I thought it was there.
But, well, I mean, in the beginning, we see here in Genesis men trying to reach that attainment of a God status, the wisdom, be like God in that way. You see Satan trying to do it, and now you see Cain also, not Cain, you see his son Lamech, the son of a son, grandson, right? It's his grandson, Lamech. Now he makes the claim that he has the power and the authority to curse anyone who dare touches him. Now let's go to the other sibling. Verse 25. Adam was intimate with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, for she said, God has given me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. A son was born to Seth also, and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. So now you're going to see this running theme in Moses. The line of Cain, the line of Seth. So we see the line of Cain, we see curse, we see a grandson who thinks he's all powerful and mighty and that he can have the right to curse anybody. And then all of a sudden we get at the end here with Seth, who came Enosh, and that we get that final line says, at that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. So a little bit separation there between these two lines and what happens. But let's keep going here.
He was actually, I'm sorry, he was actually a great grandson.
Oh, is it that far, Bahar?
It says Irad born to Enoch, and then he fathered whatever, and then he fathered the other one, and Methuselah fathered Lamech. So
it's like
it
five.
was, it was
4 or 5.
kind of.
Catch up here.
I know.
It's all right.
And you probably might have known him. It's so
Well, it was
crazy.
a grandchild. He had that part right.
They're just greats in
Yeah,
there.
just some greats in there.
Let's keep going with the line of Seth. This is the document containing the family records of Adam. On that day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and called them mankind. Adam was 130 years old when he fathered his son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. Adam lived 800 years after he fathered Seth, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Adam's life lasted 930 years, then he died. Seth was 105 years old when he fathered Enosh. Seth lived 807 years after he fathered Enosh, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Seth's life lasted 912 years, then he died. Enosh was 90 when he fathered Kenan. Enosh lived 815 years after he fathered Kenan, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Enosh's life lasted 905 years, then he died. Kenan was 70 years old when he fathered Mahalalel. Kenan lived 840 years after he fathered Mahalalel, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Kenan's life lasted 910 years, then he died. Mahalalel was 65 years old when he fathered Jared. Mahalalel lived 830 years after he fathered Jared, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Mahalalel's life lasted 895 years, then he died. Jared was 162 years old when he fathered Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after he fathered Enoch, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Jared's life lasted 962 years, then he died. Enoch, not to be confused with Cain's Enoch, okay? Not to be confused. Verse 21, Enoch was 65 years old when he fathered Methuselah. And after he fathered Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and fathered other sons and daughters. So Enoch's life lasted 365 years. Enoch walked with God. Then he was not there because God took him. Methuselah was 187 years old when he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived 782 years after he fathered Lamech, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Methuselah's life lasted 969 years, then he died. Lamech was 182 years old when he fathered a son, and he named him Noah, saying, "This one will bring us relief from the agonizing labor of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed." Lamech lived 595 years after he fathered Noah, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So Lamech's life lasted 77 years, then he died. Noah was 500 years old, and he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So, genealogies.
So is this the same Lamech that was back there?
No. These are two completely different lines.
Further down the line.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
It's the same thing.
So,
Like people.
you get one line, you get Cain, led to the bad Enoch, and then led to everyone else, then it led to the Lamech, and then you get Seth. And Seth led to the other Enoch, and that Enoch walked with God. What does that mean? Think about that for a moment. If you had read Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the very first time in your life, what do you think it means to walk with God?
Long life on earth.
It's almost as if like Adam, right? Like almost pre-fall appearance, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know what 6 and all that is stuff. I mean, 1 through 5, Adam walks with God before the fall, before he got the boot. And then we get Enoch basically almost doing the same thing. And then come from Enoch, we get Methuselah. Come through Methuselah, we get Lamech. And then we get, from Lamech, we get Noah. Now, Noah is special, right? Why do they call him Noah?
Run out of names?
They never run out of names. I mean, Noah, that's funny. Noah named his son Shem. That means name. He named his son name. They'd start picking words out of the air at this point.
Yeah, they're running out of names.
They're running out of names. He named his son name. But anyways, so Noah, this is what they hoped with Noah in verse 29. This one will bring us relief from the agonizing labor of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed. So when Noah was born, they had hoped that Noah would be the one to reverse the curse God gave mankind, Adam. I mean, you see the blessing line, right? Because what happens with Noah? Come on now. We all know the story of Noah, right? That God saw favor. We're about to read that in chapter 6. We won't get to it tonight. It's 43. But God sees favor on Noah. God's decided to start over with mankind because everyone else is what? The pits, right? I love the description. They basically did evil from the time they were born, is how God describes it in chapter 6. But not Noah. Not Noah. And so what is God going to do? Start over, right? It's going to start over. And he's going to begin with the righteous man, Noah. So if you start the world over with a righteous family, does that mean every other child, every children's going to be righteous too? And all the children beyond that are going to be great? No, of course not. Right? And that's why you take it from a New Testament perspective that we need a new heart. Man left to his own devices, man left to his own heart is going to result in what? Sin and death. We need a new heart. So even here in the beginning, in these first 5 chapters, we see sin and death. And the end result is we need to be changed from within. Now, the point that I like getting at here, as you can tell, is that a blessing follows pretty much an individual, right? A blessing, I don't know, that's the picture that Moses is getting. Because all these other guys, they all had other sons and daughters. They all had other sons and daughters, but God chose to keep a particular individual blessing, and it just follows that one individual. Now, why is that? Well, from a New Testament, it's coming to the seed to crush Satan. Like it's going to follow this one. But where does it begin with? Well, it starts with Seth. And it just jumps. And then you even get to Jacob and Esau. So thinking ahead it's here a little bit, Abraham wanted a son, right? He wanted a son. Sarah's too old. He wanted an heir of all this property and his estate. What happens? Sarah doesn't bore. She doesn't get pregnant. Who is it? Hagar. Okay? His wife's maid. And she gives birth to Ishmael, right? Now, does the blessing follow Ishmael? No, it follows Isaac. He only had one son, one true son, Isaac. Okay, we get that. So Isaac marries Rebekah. And how many children do they have? 2. Jacob and Esau. But do they both follow the blessing? No, one gets the blessing. Jacob. And then you get to the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes. Do they all get the blessing? Seems that way in the beginning, but Judah gets the blessing. And then you keep reading about Judah, and you see his sons, which eventually leads to Jesse, which eventually leads to David, which eventually leads to Solomon, and it goes on. 1. Jesus. So Moses, from Moses' perspective, he's showing the blessing. Hey, genealogy serve a purpose. Moses has a reason why he's showing it.
Yeah, you write all that on
See that wall?
I just read your Bible. There's no point in double dipping. So, but anyways, we'll get to the state of mankind in Genesis 6. Looking forward to it. Yeah, so great stuff.